Hi, you're participating in the FY23 EFP training. The Illinois Department of Human Services contracts with food banks for the distribution of food throughout Illinois using a fair share system. Food banks, in turn, contract with distribution sites, for example, food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters that want to increase their food resources and who agree to serve their communities. Voluntary participation in this no-cost program requires the food service to be conducted according to the rules and regulations established by the United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Service, United States Department of Health and Human Services, Illinois Department of Human Services, and the Northern Illinois Food Bank. Feel free to pause or rewind the training at any time if I'm moving too fast. Our training today is primarily content from IDHS, covering topics such as civil rights, non-discrimination, federal nutrition programs, required documentation, participation requirements, food safety, and monitoring. IDHS is the state agency tasked with managing EFP in Illinois. They have sent us this note. Troy is the program manager and was instrumental in securing the waiver on collecting signatures. Lisa is the program coordinator and helps place commodity and bonus orders with USDA on behalf of our food bank. Our food bank team, the director of agency relations is Jackie Hayvine. Our area leaders are Archana, Christopher, Scott, and Yvette, who are your primary point of contact at the food bank. While Mackenzie is on military duty, Yvette is the interim manager of compliance. Sujata is the EFP specialist working directly with Lisa on commodities and bonus allocations. Ann is our data specialist and go-to person for all things linked to feed. Amanda and Kelly are responsible for agency alert emails, supporting our training and network sessions, overseeing food safety and partnering for success, and providing link to feed training. Chris is responsible for our CRM. That is our customer relations management platform we will be rolling out to our agencies in FY 2023. Sarah is our grant specialist, and let's not forget our customer relations team, Kevin, Karen, and David. Karen and David make sure your EFP orders are created in our system and that fresh items like milk, eggs, and produce also makes their way to you. Program rules and regulations training, including civil rights and non-discrimination laws, is an annual requisite. At least one person from every distribution site is required to attend this training, but attendance of all distribution site staff and volunteers is strongly encouraged. A link to the test is available in the video description. There are two manuals for the EFP program. The IDHS manual must be kept on site and made available to site personnel at all times. The food bank manual acts as a complement to the IDHS site manual. This manual is to further explain parts of the IDHS manual and give insight into food bank operations and standards for EFP. During this training, both the IDHS distribution and site manual and the food bank EFP manual will be referenced. TEFAP and TANF are funded by the federal government, and all contracted food banks, food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters must comply with all civil rights and non-discrimination laws. Civil rights and non-discrimination are the cornerstones of USDA policy and must be adhered to at all levels of distribution. Civil rights training is required for all staff on an annual basis. Training must be documented and kept on file by the food bank and sent to IDHS. Discrimination, the act of distinguishing one person or group of persons from others, either intentionally, by neglect, or by effective actions or lack of actions based on their protected basis. In accordance with federal civil rights law and USDA civil rights regulations and policies, the USDA, its agencies, offices, employees, and institutions participating in or administering USDA programs are prohibited from discriminating based on race, color, national origin, sex, disability, age, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity in any program or activity conducted or funded by USDA. Distribution sites that have recipients with disabilities who require alternative means of communication for program information should contact their respective food bank. The food bank will contact IDHS if help is needed in acquiring the alternative means of communication. To comply with civil rights requirements, food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters must provide civil rights and non-discrimination training to staff and volunteers, conduct outreach to underrepresented communities, making potential recipients aware of available services and days and hours of operation, place notices in local newspapers, posters, pamphlets, newsletters, website, or other electronic media, display the Injustice for All posters, and accommodate people with disabilities. Public notification is to inform applicants, participants, and potentially eligible persons of program availability, program rights and responsibilities, the policy of non-discrimination, the procedure for filing a complaint. Elements of public notification. State agencies and their sub-recipients must make program information available to the public upon request. Prominently display the Injustice for All poster. Inform potentially eligible persons, applicants, participants, and grassroots organizations of programs or changes in programs. Convey the message of equal opportunity in all photos and other graphics that are used to provide program or program-related information. Provide appropriate information in alternative formats for persons with disabilities and in the appropriate language for LEP persons. The Injustice for All poster mandates that all recipients must be treated equally and instructs recipients on how to report discrimination complaints. The non-discrimination statement must be printed on all public material in accordance with the federal civil rights law and the U.S. Department of Agriculture civil rights regulations and policies. Limited English Proficiency, LEP, is one type of national origin discrimination based on a recipient's inability to speak, read, write, or understand English. IDHS strongly encourages distribution site staff and volunteers to improve the language accessibility by reducing language barriers for people with limited English proficiency. TEFAP forms and manuals are available in numerous languages, and if a different language is needed, it can be requested. Forms, manuals, and posters are made available in languages other than English. Recognizing a civil rights discrimination complaint. Complaints can be verbal or written. The discrimination must be based on one or more of the 6 protected classes: race, color, national origin, sex, disability, age. Complaints can be made to any staff member or volunteer at the food bank, Pantry, DHS, or the USDA. It is important that site personnel follow the correct complaint process and procedure. This is the Civil Rights Discrimination Form. Customers can call the USDA for a complaint form, or the food bank can provide one. The complaint is submitted directly to USDA. Conflict resolution components include control emotional responses, seek understanding, identify the need and common interest, and seek a mutual benefit or purpose. Constructive conflict resolution includes defining the problem, issue, or complaint, identifying the activity causing conflict and assess the details of the information provided, recognizing, respecting, and responding to the feelings of those involved in the conflict, identifying points of similarity and difference that are in the conflict. Keys to good customer service. Recognize neighbors have varied needs and few resources. Recognize when a neighbor feels they have been treated in a rude or discourteous manner. Learn to practice empathy when necessary and develop good listening skills. What is TEFAP? The Emergency Food Assistance Program. It provides food at no cost to help supplement the diets of needy low-income households, also known simply as EFP. This is a federal program administered by the Food and Nutrition Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The terms customer, neighbor, shopper, client, and recipient all refer to the person shopping for a household, unless the shopper is a proxy. IDHS does not require any proof of address or identity for any shopper and disallows the requirement to see proof of identity or residency for the non-shopping members of the household. In the 1930s, the USDA began buying farm products to shore up farm prices and help American farmers suffering from the impact of the Great Depression. The Agricultural Act of 1935 provided the base for purchasing surplus commodities and donating them to federal food programs. Due to increases in surplus foods, the Temporary Emergency Food Assistance Program Act was signed in May 1983. This is the EFP program we know and love. In Illinois, the program is administered by IDHS. Where does product come from? EFP product comes from several sources: entitlement, which is the regular EFP commodities; temporary assistance for needy families, TANF product; bonus items; and federal response, for example, trade mitigation. In Illinois, there are 680 food distribution sites. And at the Northern Illinois Food Bank, we have over 100 agencies that participate in the EFP program. So here you can see the accomplishments for FY21 and also the accomplishments as of February 2022 for the state. FY 2022 accomplishments for the food bank and our network partners. This is as of May 20, 2022. Households served over 480,000, pounds distributed over 8 million pounds. That is about 6.8 million meals, and individuals served. That is about 1.5 million neighbors. What is TANF? TANF is temporary assistance for needy families. To qualify for TANF food, a recipient must be pregnant or have at least one child 18 years of age or younger who lives with them, resides in Illinois. All homeless neighbors qualify and must sign the signature sheet or the proxy statement. This is the same government program that provides TANF cash assistance to households with children. The food bank receives a fair share entitlement amount that we use to purchase kid-friendly food. EFP agencies distribute this food to households with children 18 and under. EFP soup kitchens and shelter sites do not receive TANF food. The food bank typically receives its TANF entitlement amount in January and makes purchases in February through March. All TANF purchased food must leave the food bank by June 30th each year. What is SNAP? SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. IDHS and the food bank both have toll-free SNAP hotlines. If you are interested in having one of our SNAP representatives attend your distribution to help answer questions about SNAP eligibility, applications, and recertification, let your area leader know. Distribution documentation. Proofread all signature sheets and proxy forms for accuracy and completeness. Submit the original signature sheet to the food bank by the 5th business day of the following month. Food pantries must ensure that the most updated current fiscal year signature sheet is being utilized. Food pantries are encouraged to utilize the pre-filled signature sheet provided by the food bank at the beginning of each state fiscal year, July 1. The food bank name, the food pantry name, and the pantry address fields are pre-populated to help eliminate errors. Food pantry staff or volunteers can enter all signature sheet information on behalf of the recipient. IDHS has waived the requirement to collect signatures at this time. Proxy form. Pantries can choose whether or not to allow proxy shopping. If an agency allows proxy shopping, all eligible persons must be allowed to participate. Due to the signature waiver, there is an amendment to the proxy form process. Pantries will collect one FY23 proxy form for each proxy shopper or recipient, as long as the information on the forms is still accurate. A new form will not be required for future visits. If the recipient works with more than one proxy shopper, multiple proxy forms are required. The recipient, i.e. the person who will eat the food, must fill in their name, address, number of persons in the household, number of children, and whether or not they participate in SNAP. Finally, the recipient is required to sign the bottom of the proxy statement form attesting to their eligibility. The proxy signs and dates the form while at the pantry. The pantry staff also sign and date the form. All three signatures, all dates are required on this form. Logging visits. Signature requirements is waived, but all household information must be collected. Special distributions. The most important thing to remember is that we need household information each time EFP food is distributed. If you are distributing food but not including EFP commodities, for example, holiday meal boxes, you don't have to collect a signature or report those numbers. If you want to report them as non-EFP households and persons served. If you are doing a special distribution, again, holiday meal boxes, and clients are also able to shop, are leaving the pantry with EFP food, you must collect household information. Include those neighbors in your monthly service report. Keep in mind, your numbers served impact the amount of food you receive. Bread and produce distributions. Household information must be collected if any items are EFP. If no EFP items are used, for example, all product came off the shopping list, is from your fresh rescue delivery or from your direct connect, there is no requirements to collect EFP household information. Methods of collecting client information. Due to the continued waiver on collecting signatures, we want to clarify data collection options and requirements. You can collect information on signature sheets, and pantry personnel can fill in the client's information and no signature is required. Or many of you are using databases to log visits, or you are tracking client visits using another kind of list. Client visit information can be stored in a list or database. The list can be on paper or electronic. For example, a list of clients in an Excel spreadsheet. The database can be online, linked to Feed, Food Bank Manager, or offline, like an Access database. Any stored client information should be reviewed, updated on a regular basis. This should be done annually. List database must collect all required EFP information. Household size, address with city, number of children 18 and under, SNAP participation. If you use Link to Feed, you do not need to submit a monthly service report or a list of client visits. We pull this information for you out of Link to Feed. You are required to submit any proxy forms collected during the month. If you are using a list or a database that is not linked to Feed, you will be required to submit a monthly service report including totals for households, individuals, households with children, number of children served, and SNAP participants. A listing of all visits. This can be done from an Excel file or from a PDF. We provided for you an example of a list model, a database report of visits. Please note that the client ID field is just a generic ID number Pantries may assign to clients. Please do not submit ID numbers like driver's license or state ID numbers. Eligibility requirements. Customers must not be asked to prove their eligibility. Anyone eating at a soup kitchen or shelter is assumed to be eligible for services. Proof of income. Self-attestation, self-declaration is the accepted means of documenting income eligibility. The term self-attestation indicates to certify that a document is true, correct, or genuine by signing. A self-declaration is a statement made by a person declaring that all the statements of facts, figures, and circumstances mentioned in a document is true and correct. Distribution sites are prohibited from verifying income. Distribution sites are not allowed to ask for Social Security cards, pay stubs, or income data for the distribution of TEFAP foods. If your agency needs to report on income levels due to government funding requirements, you can survey clients about their income. As long as the survey is optional, responses are in no way connected to the ability to access groceries, and clients are able to select from a range of incomes. For example, no one has to specify their exact income. Proof of identity and residency. Allowable types of identification and proof of residency are driver's license, state ID, or a piece of mail such as a utility bill or letter from the landlord. Pantries can ask for proof of identity and or residency from the recipients only. Pantries should not ask for documentation, proof of identity, or residency for other household members. The recipient can pick up for the whole house, and this is self-attestation, providing identification or residency by the recipient is sufficient to attest for the entire household. Distribution sites that need to have a restricted geographic service area must have the respective food bank's prior approval. Recipients who are not living within the restricted geographic area must be served at least one time and then referred to a distribution site serving their area. Pantries who verify recipient identity residency must do so for every recipient at every visit, except in the following cases. A pantry can check identity proof of residency on an annual basis only, rather than at each visit, as long as the pantry has a system in place to check each shopper on an annual basis. As a best practice, the pantry should post a notice advertising to neighbors of this system. A pantry can check identity and residency on the first visit only, as long as they check every first visitor's identity and residency. As a best practice, the pantry should post a notice advising shoppers of this system. Serving homeless recipients. Self-declaration by homeless recipients must be accepted. The distribution site may indicate the address of the pantry or write none in the address section of the signature sheet or proxy statement. When serving homeless recipients, food pantries should consider the types of foods that are appropriate and easy to use and prepare. However, do not automatically assume that a homeless recipient does not have access to appliances for cooking or storing refrigerated frozen products. Work with the recipient to provide non-discriminatory services. TEFAP and TANF food distribution. Temporary amendments to documentation and eligibility. The signature requirement has been suspended. Income eligibility increased from 185% to 200%. Food banks will notify distribution sites when normal operations resume. food pantries. Food pantries have to be open at least 2 hours per week, must display their operating days and hours. Eligible customers are entitled to service at least once every 30 days. They may not be charged fees or require memberships. Documentation is to include the signature sheets and the proxy forms. And food pantries must distribute EFP in combination with other foods, and they may not distribute EFP separately. Closures. Agencies are to make sure area leader is aware of closures, and the area leader will update IDHS website with these closures. Ideally, agencies will plan all closures for the year and let the food bank and shoppers know of their scheduled closures. Customer relations also needs to be notified if your closure occurs during a scheduled delivery. An unplanned closure may be due to inclement weather or an emergent situation such as flooding or a lack of power to the building. If your agency needs to make an unplanned closure, we ask that you do your best to alert your clients. Pantries can display signage at their location, post to social media, set a voicemail greeting alerting callers to the closure, or send a mass email or text message to clients. Some pantries institute policies around closures. For example, if the school district is closed, the pantry will be closed. Do your best to make clients aware of how you will communicate closures ahead of time so they know where to look. If you have a scheduled delivery or pickup but cannot safely accept the delivery or complete the pickup, call customer relations as soon as possible. Again, you also need to notify your area leader. Homeless shelters and soup kitchens. They must serve at least 2 hours per week. Post meal service schedule. Must count every meal served. The food bank also requires a report of the number of individuals served. You have to count additional helpings as individual meals and add to your total number. Not reporting all meals served could result in a reduction of your commodities. Documentation about how meals were computed each month. Was it by sign-in or plate counting is required. Submit monthly reports to the food bank for total meals served. If a pantry also operates as a soup kitchen, make sure the food is properly separated and tracked for the two programs. Again, when it comes to closures, agencies are to make their area leader aware of closures, and area leader will update IGA's website with closures. Ideally, agencies will plan all closures for the year and let the food bank and shoppers know of their scheduled closures. Customer relations also needs to be notified if your closure occurs during a scheduled delivery. In the event of an unplanned emergency closure, notify your area rep immediately. If you have a delivery scheduled, notify customer relations immediately. Do your best to notify your neighbors. EFP manual changes. Requests for reduction or cancellation of your EFP product must be made by the 15th of the month prior. So agencies can request a reduction to their fair share if storage is an issue or if the agency has an upcoming planned closure. Reductions are for all commodities. You cannot request a reduction for a specific item or type of item. Agencies may request a reduction in any amount to 50%. Splitting EFP. Agencies who receive more than one delivery each month can request their EFP product on any one delivery. If the agency is receiving more than 10 cases of one item and has more than one delivery in the month, that item can be split between the two deliveries. Required posters. All posters must be in plain view for all recipients. Printed copies have been ordered and will be mailed to you. Every EFP site is required to have a copy of the current fiscal year IDHS distribution site manual available and accessible. This year's manual will be emailed to you. Printed copies have been ordered. You may keep the manual in print or digitally. It is important that at least one person on site at any given time knows where the manual is and is aware of its contents. Hours of operation. Signs displaying the hours and days of operation must be posted inside and outside of the building in clear view of recipients. Agencies must register their days and hours of operation with the food bank. They must also be open to the general public during established times. They may not require recipients to make appointments, must operate for at least 2 hours per week. That does not include on-call times or food preparation, cleanup, and restocking times. Obtaining approval from respective food bank for rural exemption allows for special operating procedures and limited hours of operation in sparsely populated rural areas. Income eligibility guidelines. This poster is updated annually by IDHS. It includes the income table, also found on the signature sheet or proxy statement that lists the maximum allowable monthly gross income for household sizes. As a reminder, while the state policy still sets the income limit at 185% of the federal poverty level, we have an ongoing waiver that increases the limit to 200%. The Injustice for All poster mandates that all recipients must be treated equally and instructs recipients on how to report discrimination complaints. Notice to Program Participants poster lists the conditions the recipient agrees to upon signing the signature sheet and proxy statement. Recipient is within household gross income limit. Recipient agrees commodities will be for household consumption only. Recipient releases food pantry, food bank, USDA, and IDHS from liabilities. Prohibited activities poster lists activities that violate TEFAP regulations and instructs the recipient on what action to take. Recipients will not be asked to pay for food or to exchange services for food. Recipients do not have to join any organization as a precondition to service. Political activity in any form is prohibited during distributions. Food pantry staff may not wear campaign buttons or politically related apparel. Candidates must not make appearances at food pantries, soup kitchens, and homeless shelters. Campaign literature and signage may not be on display. Food pantries may not provide bags or boxes advertising candidates or political causes. Food received is for in-home use only and may not be sold. Recipients must receive food in its original packaging. The written notice of rights poster instructs the recipient of their right to be referred to another pantry, soup kitchen, or shelter if there is a religious character conflict. All posters must be in plain view for all recipients. Food storage and safety. Sites must comply with state and local laws. policies, procedures, and warehousing standards. Food must be stored in a manner to protect from spoilage, infestation, damage, or other conditions that may jeopardize the safety of foods. The receipt of damaged, spoiled, infested USDA commodities must be reported to the food bank. Thermometers must be at the proper temperature range for refrigerated and frozen foods. First in, first out. Dry and refrigerated commodities must be rotated to ensure the quality and freshness. Packaging, dented cans can be used unless you notice any of the following: bulged cans, leakage, damaged seals, and rust. Seals, rust. Storing refrigerated and frozen commodities. All cold units must have a thermometer, be cleaned and inspected, allow for proper air circulation. Refrigeration temperature should be at the 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and freezer temperatures should be 0 or below. Storing of dry commodities. Store in a dry, cool place. Store away from direct sunlight. Should be 2 feet from the ceiling clearance, at least 6 inches off the floor, at least 4 inches from the wall to allow for proper ventilation and pest control. Keep floor, pallet, storage, and shelving clean. Keep non-food items separate from the food, and must have proper pest control by a pest control provider, and keep your pest control logs or your receipts and or contracts. So expiration and use by date. Do not use or distribute food when not fit for human consumption, regardless of product dates or when food received. Quality control is important. Conditions to report to the food bank. Quality issues in the product, its odor, its appearance. Foreign materials in the product, metal or bones. Poor packaging, split bags, leaking, rusting, or bulging cans. So manufacturers put dates on products to help consumers and retailers decide when food is at its highest quality. Dates are not indicators of a product's safety and are not required or regulated by the USDA. So with the use by, this is found on refrigerated foods. The sell by date is found on breads, dairy item, and meat items. And the best by date is usually found on chips and crackers. In the event of a food recall, the program manager will notify the food bank, and in turn, the food bank will notify the pantry of any foods that may be recalled and what actions need to be taken for the recalled food. Monitoring sites and inspections. All program staff and volunteers must be informed that food bank, USDA, and IDHS inspectors have the authority to inspect food storage and distribution facilities. Denying an inspector access or not being in compliance with rules and regulations may result in loss of USDA commodities. Both IDHS and the food bank conduct regular monitoring visits. These have been somewhat delayed due to COVID. Since there are ongoing restrictions to travel for state employees, IDHS will begin conducting monitoring visits via phone in FY22, and this same practice will be done in FY2023. The following topics of questions will be covered during the monitor visit or call. General questions on the monitor will be asked: the number of clients served in a month, your general average, if you are under a rural exemption, service area for your pantry, if your if you serve customers outside your area, and EFP Manual accessible to pantry staff. IDHS is required by federal law to periodically monitor distribution sites, food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters. Monitoring results are given to the food bank, which will review the results and resolve any issues with the distribution site. Monitoring results may also be discussed with the distribution site staff prior to the conclusion of the monitoring visit. It is recommended that the distribution site staff and volunteers review the food pantry observation form and/or the soup kitchen homeless shelter observation form in preparation for the IDHS monitoring visit. Both of these documents can be found in the IDHS site manual. IDHS monitoring staff will visit your distribution site during your distribution hours. A link to the test will be available in the video description. Thank you for participating in the EFP FY 2023 training.